Final question of the evening before we get to closing statements. Do you support a rewrite of the Alabama State Constitution? Tim James.
I do not support a constitutional convention. That is nothing but a sneaky backdoor attempt to raise taxes on the working men and women of this state, period. Back in the late 70s, I'll tell you a quick story. Have a little history. My dad ran for governor on a platform to rewrite the Constitution. And in those days, you had two lobby groups getting going. You had the Alpha and the AEA. He would tell you that after 3 weeks, he shut it down because it became the biggest free-for-all to control the outcome. Can you only imagine what it would be today? The Alabama Constitution is what protects your unfettered right of local governments to raise your taxes. The Alabama Constitution is what has kept debt limits on the spending habits of Jefferson County. If it was not there, they probably really would be bankrupt. It needs cleaning up, and you can do it in an article by article rewrite. You take each article, clean it up in the legislature, and let the people vote on it. That's how it should be done.
I really have not had a strong feeling on the Constitution. I have not really been one that says that we definitely need a change in our Constitution. It works. It's not only a framework of government, it's a working document. I know it's too long. I know it has some language in it that we probably should clean up, but I have not been one that has worried about that, like chambers of commerce and people of higher education, and there are people in the state, there are groups that really just get all worried about our Constitution. Now, I've looked at it in both ways. In fact, year before last, there was a bill that was presented that I actually voted for, and I thought it was a fairly good bill. This bill said, will the people of Alabama be allowed to vote on whether or not they have a constitutional convention? That was the first stopgap. The second was, if they did vote for that, then they would have to vote on the people who served on it. If they wrote a constitution, the third stopgap was the people would be allowed to vote on the Constitution. Now, having said that, this last year, I actually voted against it, so I guess I voted for it before I voted against it. And the reason I did this last year is because you always have to look at the motivation of why people want a new Constitution. And last year, I felt the motivation was to raise taxes. And when the motivation is to raise taxes, then I'm against it. And so I think you just have to look at it. I think that this is an issue that some people think is so important, but when you get right down to it, our Constitution still works. And our frame of government still works.
I do not support a constitutional convention. I do support that in 2003 there was a constitutional commission that was formed that made some specific recommendations to address some of what felt like challenges with our current Constitution through the legislative process. One of those that got passed was limited home rule. And as I stated earlier, I really do believe those decisions made closest to the people are the best decisions. And I believe that all the way up until Jefferson County sewer debt fiasco, and a long line of elected officials going to jail. I still do believe that. I say that in jest, but there is an issue that while we have limited home rule, we also have to recognize that what happens at the local level oftentimes affects us at the state level. Our bond rating, for instance, at the state level has been affected by the Jefferson County sewer debt debacle. So there are ways to address it. I do not support a constitutional convention to change the Constitution. I actually like the current Constitution because it's very difficult to raise taxes. That's one of the best things I like about it. It's almost impossible to raise taxes, and I do support that. I do think that while we have the limited home rule and we want people to make those decisions and we want to protect the other folks in the rest of the part of the state, I had suggested that we have a bond financing oversight commission. at the state level. I suggested this to the governor more than a year ago, had a white paper done by Auburn University Center for Government so that they would review every public financing instrument, debt bond instrument that was done, to assign a risk rating to it and to make sure that there was a benchmark for fees, so that we established some transparency, so that even though the local folks could still decide how they wanted to live their life, there was like a second group of eyes that were going to look at it and say, well, wait a second, how might this affect the rest of us living here in the state, like what has happened with the Jefferson County situation?